Hey guys, I'm making another video to show you a project that I'm working on. I follow Rachel on woolen spinning, and her community do a color and breed study every 6 months. And I did the last color and breed study, which was Masham, and I found it really interesting to dye and spin something that I normally wouldn't choose. So I decided to do it again. And this time the fiber is called Dorset Horn, and it's got a higher micron count, so it's a bit more toothy and it's a thicker fiber than what I would normally spin. I tend to go for really fine fibers and really luxurious blends like bamboos and silks and low micron merino because my skin's really sensitive and higher micron wool feels like insulation on my skin. But I got Shetland to try it once, and I thought it felt awful when I took it out of the bag. And people were saying, oh, I love this for spinning baby clothes, and I was completely confused by that, because for me it felt really itchy. But I spun it, and it's actually really nice. Like, I don't know if I could still put it next to my face, but it's lovely. So that really challenged me to like try a fiber that I wouldn't necessarily assume I would be comfortable with. So this one is Dorset Horn, and normally what happens is Rachel and her friend Katrina work together to make the fiber, to do all the fiber prep, and you just buy the kit and you get the fiber and you spin it. But I can't really afford that with postage and everything. So what I tend to do is buy the raw wool from World of Wool and dye it myself. And sometimes I follow their colors and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I try and completely fail and don't. Like the last colors were like yellows and oranges and grays. No, there was black and white, and then like I think like oranges and blues and reds. And when I dyed it, mine turned out gray. So it didn't work, but it was fine. It actually looks really neat now that it's done. So this time around, what they did was they're doing a woolen prep, which is rolags, and they did a colorway. Sorry, I'm trying to think of like the most coherent way to explain this. They did a colorway, and they split the colorway in half and blended half with white fiber, the same type of fiber, and half with black fiber to show how the black and white plays with the color and interacts. So I got my fiber a couple days ago, and so this is the Dorset Horn, and it's very sheepy, and it still smells like sheepy. And I got 200 grams because you have to buy it in 100-gram lots. I got 200 grams, and I split, how do you explain that? So I split everything into 50-gram chunks. So 50 grams is white, 50 grams is black. In this case, it's a dark gray. And then the last 100 grams, I made a colorway, which is this one. And I'll split this in half, and 50 grams of this will go with the white, and 50 grams will go with the black. And they're going to be turned into rolags. Now, I don't have a blending board to make rolags, so I'm going to make them off my drum garter. So I'll show you that. And like the other videos that I made, this is just going to show the process with some music so you can chill out and watch. I had recorded it, like how I dyed this fiber, and that'll come up first before it gets to the blending. And while I was doing that, I realized I really don't like explaining what I'm doing while I'm working. I prefer to just work. And if you guys ever have any questions, just ask in the comments or on my Facebook. I love answering questions. I just don't like talking while I'm working. So that's why I don't have any voiceovers while I'm doing stuff. So anyway, I'm going to start preparing the fiber. Enjoy, and it'll just go from dyeing to blending to spinning, and then I'll show you what I finally came up with at the end with the yarn. And I'm pretty sure I'll probably weave with this, but I'm not 100% sure yet. But we'll get to that in the end. Enjoy! Hey guys, it's a couple weeks later and I finished the spin for the Dorset Horn breed and color study for woolen spinning, and I decided to film outside because it's gorgeous out. Sorry if there's a bit of wind. So here are the 4 skeins that I did. Each one is about 50 grams, and this is the black and color end ply. This is the black and color 2-ply, the white and color 2-ply, and the white and color end ply. And I'm really pleased with the way they turned out. And depending on the light, my preference about which one I like the most changes. I think this is the one I like the best. It's funny, like I've been looking at these for the last day, and inside they look a lot darker. The blacks look a lot darker than they do out here, so that kind of changes. Like I like this one better than I thought I did outside because I can see it better. So I'm kind of torn about the spin. I really like the breed and color studies because it makes me spin something I know that I won't necessarily like. And like is such an subjective idea. Like, I don't like these because they're coarse wools and it's itchy to me and I don't know what to use them in now. And even if I was to make a bag, like if I was to weave them and make a bag out of it, I would still probably find it unpleasant to touch. But I'm also incredibly picky about fibers against my skin. And I actually prefer knitting with cotton just because I prefer that silky smooth. Like I prefer bamboos, silks, cotton, or like super fine merino. Polworth is nice. And then even past Polworth, I start to get like, yeah, no, I don't want this next to my skin. So me saying that this is itchy is not the same as what other people will say is itchy. I just have incredibly sensitive skin to itch. This does feel wiry to me though. Like if it's coarse. It was a really nice spin though, like because the fibers are coarse, they pull each other. So, and they stay connected to each other. So you can go very thin and it won't break the way like silk or bamboo will. The weird thing is I spun the thinnest I've ever spun as a single, and it still looks like almost a DK weight, mostly. Like there's a couple spots here that stayed nice and thin, and that might even be like a sock weight. But then, like if you get over here, it's quite a bit thicker, or like up there. I liked learning, like visually, just personally seeing myself, the difference in the colors. Like the end ply keeps the colors together, so you get more of a striping yarn. And then there's some barber pulling in there. But then if you go over to the 2-ply, it becomes very heather. There's barber pulling and heathering in there. So these were spun from rolags. So it's the same color progression repeating constantly, but there's overlap of every color at different points. And I think, like, I find this really pretty. If this was a lot softer, I would make something out of this for Addie, maybe. What I am going to do with them, because I've spun them and I don't want to waste them, is I'm going to weave with them. And then I can decide if the fabric is something I can make something out of. My 2 options are, I'm either going to do a balanced cloth that has 3 plies on the end, on the 2 selvage sides of the warp, and 2-ply in the center, and figure out what kind of color patterning I want to do. Or I want to do a sampler cloth where I split each skein in half and do it and set it up like this. No, I would set it up like this, I think, and have the 2 end plies and the 2-plies together, and then with the other half of each skein turned into weft, go up, and then you'll be able to see 2-ply on 2-ply white in color and 2-ply on 2-ply black in color, and then you'll be able to see 3-ply on 3-ply and 3-ply on 3-ply, but you'll also be able to see like 3-ply on 2-ply. And So if I split each of these skeins in half, and one half of each skein goes to the warp and one half of each skein goes to the weft, they'll all overlap each other at some point in the woven piece, and you'll get like a chunk that you can then like contrast and compare to the other parts of the same fabric. Does that make sense? And for you, now you're going to see what I decided to do with the weaving. Hey guys, I'm finished weaving my Dorset Horn color study. It's a few days later, and this is the pattern or design I came up with. I decided to go with the sampler because I knew I would not use this fabric for anything that had to touch my skin. So the pattern that I came up with was N ply, 2 ply, 2 ply, N ply. So the warps are set up like this. So that's N2 to N. And I made it 1.5 meters long, but I don't think I wove that far. I think I wove to about 1.25 meters. And then for the weft, I kept it in the same order. So it's N2 to N. And I kept that all the way up. So down in the beginning, I started out measuring my weft by each length of the shuttle was 1, and I did 14. And that roughly ends up at 14 picks, which roughly makes a square because there's 7 dents per skein, which, because it's doubled, makes 14 warps wide and then 14 picks high. So it was roughly a square I was going for, just to get all the samples of each one like each skein touching each other skein. So that's how I set it up. And then when I got further up, I decided to go longer. So this is 20 picks, and I did that for each color, and then I went to 28 picks per color. And it just happens that it's exactly in half. So these are all the 14 picks, and this is 20 picks and 28 picks. But it works out almost exactly in half. So I think I might sew this into a table cloth for a friend of mine. I thought that there would be a bigger difference in thickness when you got to the N over N and N over N, because I kept, so this is an N ply and this is an N ply, and where they lapped, it is a denser fabric, but I thought it would be even more dense than it is. What kind of surprised me is that even though the yarns are quite different, there's a uniformity to the whole thing. But then one of the reasons I extended the picks was because I realized I wasn't getting very many color changes in these short ones. Like this is a dramatic color change, like it goes from purple to black. And down here it goes from peach to purple. But like on these ones, it just seemed solid black. So when I went to the longer, to more picks, on the 20 you can see it goes from like the purple into the peach. So what I expected was it to be more defined, that the N plies would have more defined colors than the 2 plies. And in some places they definitely do, but in other places it's just as heathered. So yeah, I'm finished, and it was a really interesting study. I'm really torn about doing projects with fiber that I know I'm not going to use or don't like. Like, you can't tell until you get the fiber in your hand, right? So, I mean, the cost of this was minimal. I bought 2 braids myself. I think they're like £1.60. So there's like maybe €5 invested in dyeing these and trying them out. So that's not a problem. I guess for me, is it worth the time to spin it and put it into a project if I know I'm not going to like it? Or if there's a chance that I'm not going to like it, I guess. If I know I like luxury fibers, because I'll use those. But I really do like the learning process, and I found it really interesting to work with the colors like this. I might actually do the same setup with a colorway that I like better, and blend 1/2 black and 1/2 with white, and actually do this again with fibers that I like in a different colorway, because I really like visually, I think this is quite interesting. You could come up with a really beautiful piece that you would use, and parts of it seem plaid and then parts of it seem really blended. I find these sections really interesting. Like, this is 2-ply on 2-ply, and I really like the speckling that you get. What I learned from the project, sorry, I'm tripping over my words, was interesting. Like, I expected bigger differences in the M-ply and subtler differences in the 2-ply, and that didn't really happen. And I don't know if that's from the fact that it was spun from woolen from rolags, or if it would be like that if it was spun worsted from comb top. I have these little balls left from the project, and part of me is tempted to knit them into little swatches, and part of me is tempted to just be done with the project now and just leave it. What I find fascinating is that I find the fiber so itchy and uncomfortable to touch, but the more I work with it, the less I notice the itch. Like, this doesn't feel now as awful as I thought it did in the beginning. I still can't put it next to my skin, but it's not like offensively itchy anymore. And I don't know if I've just gotten used to it or if it's softened with time, but I find that kind of funny. That's my breeding color study.